All right, so I have to confess that I never liked sales or marketing. Like, when I was a brownie through Girl Scouts, I did not want to sell Girl Scout cookies. In track, I did not want to sell Kit Kats to the kids on the bus. And my dad ran a successful business, and whenever he suggested that possibly, you know, one of us kids could maybe take it over, I was like, that is the last thing that I would ever want to do. Also, I have to confess that I was one of those sociology students who kind of turned up my nose at the other business or econ students at Wheaton College, because obviously, like, they're a little less spiritual, and who would ever want to do that? That's like totally distasteful. So God, in His great humor, has therefore placed me in a social enterprise doing sales and marketing and business. And it turns out that it is a great fit. One of the things that I want to share with you is that sometimes God puts us in roles that are unexpected and that don't feel like you on first glance, that other people could actually do better than you, but He has a plan in that, and I am so excited and thankful to be a part of Azizi Life. So what I want to do today is just kind of share with you the lessons that we've learned along the way. We have grown very organically, and there have been many joys as well as challenges, and so I just want to share with you a snippet of my own story, and as well as the story of Azizi Life, how we began and where we are today. And then we'll have time for questions at the end. And you can be prepared, you can ask me anything. I'm an open book. So I grew up here in Montgomery County, and I went to Wheaton College, studied sociology and urban studies, and then when I graduated, I was a part of an urban church plant and community center. And for 7 years, I was in the field of therapeutic recreation in a nursing home, which was great. I loved it. It's diverse and great people time, creative, so that was what I was doing and loving doing. But there came a point when God really caught my attention again with things that I had heard in many a chapel service at Wheaton, but yeah, really caught my attention with the needs of the poor in developing nations. And it's probably an area where our paths are parallel to one another's a bit. But I was stopped in my tracks and really left with the question of, like, okay, if I want to serve God with my life, and He cares about the poor and the oppressed and the fatherless and the widow, then what is my faithful response? And when I was honest with myself, I really felt that I could not be trusted to respond in the wholehearted manner that I felt like I should if I stayed in the States. I'm way too prone to distraction, and so that was a little bit like, oh dear, okay, but maybe if this is my world, if this is my literal neighbor, and it's my day-to-day life, then maybe I will be faithful to respond in God's way. But then I was left with the question of, what in the world can I do to be useful to the Lord in a developing context? as I mentioned, I studied sociology, which meant that I had very few practical skills to offer, seeing as I was not research-minded. And the practical skills that I did have was like leading chair exercises and sing-alongs. And I really took a long time to figure out, like, what could I do that would be useful to the Lord? And so I began to look at what are Christians doing in response to poverty, particularly in the developing world. And through that process, I was really drawn to the work of holistic development that addresses physical and spiritual needs in an integrated way. And then drawn to the organization Food for the Hungry that does relief and development work around the world. And so the time from, it was 2003 when God stopped me in my tracks and my path shifted and I started trying to figure out what I could do to serve. And I was accepted with Food for the Hungry. I spent a year in support raising, during which time I learned a lot, and I grew a lot, and I saw God's provision. And then in the summer of 2007, I landed finally in Rwanda. Yay! I was so excited, and because I was on a 3-year contract, I had plenty of time allotted at the beginning for language and culture learning and getting adjusted. And so I really, I took that time and I enjoyed it. And then I got to help out my colleagues in various areas and kind of explore that way. And like taking photos of sponsor children. And now, just an aside, if you have a picture of a sponsor child on your refrigerator who looks kind of like this, it may not be because of their suffering, it may be because there's a white girl behind the camera and their mothers told them that if they were bad, the white person would eat them. So that is what happened to me. No, don't cry, you're supposed to smile. So I helped out my colleagues in various areas, and then I pinpointed a strategy for holistic development that's asset-based and bottom-up and community, organized. And I had a colleague who was training with me in this kind of development, and we were really excited, and we invested time, and we did a little bit of training for others, and then all of a sudden it became totally apparent that it wasn't going to work at all. And so it really is true what they tell you about your needing to be flexible, particularly in the context of working internationally. And I don't know if you have seen those kind of diagrams of the ebbs and flows of inner experience in an international context. Like you get there and you're super excited and it goes like this, and then it kind of... So I was towards the end of my first year, and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Someone give me something practical to do. And it was at that time that God presented to me this opportunity to get in at the very beginning of this social enterprise, doing a role that in 2003 or in 2007, you couldn't have even paid me to do, but it turned out that it was the right thing, it was God's thing for me. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the beginnings of Azizi Life in a minute, but I want to show you this video. It's really short. It was created by one of our customers, The Story Company, which is a great business. And it just, I think, really gets to the heart of who Azizi Life is and what we're doing, and introduces you to a few of our artisan groups. So that is just a glimpse of Azizi Life, of who we are, and what we're doing. What we're doing looks a lot like buying and selling crafts, which it is, but the heart of what we're doing is expressing our love for God and for people. And business happens to be the way that we're doing that. In 2006 through 8, Food for the Hungry had a contract with the Rwandan government to oversee a program in the southern province of Rwanda that supported non-agricultural, rural, social micro-enterprise. And so my colleague, Tom McGregor, who's right here in our team picture, came to Rwanda at about the same time and was working for this Pepimere program, and saw that all of the businesses were really struggling for market. But among all those businesses, there was some local market for the furniture makers and the hairdressers and the tailors, and even the beekeepers had some local market. But there are all these groups of artisans who were formed into associations and cooperatives, and they had been strongly advised that like craft was the way to go. There was great market for it. There was specific skills training in, in making like this basket. You know, the government will give you training on making this basket. And it was true that in that time, about 70% of the buyers of Rwandan crafts were Rwandans. Mm-hmm. So there was some market, but the artisans selling within their own communities, their income was very little, and sometimes what their neighbors were willing to pay for something like didn't even cover their raw materials. And so the artisans in particular were really struggling and not gaining a livelihood from their craft. So it came from those observations of these associations and cooperatives, the idea of connecting the artisans with a market. Mm. And one of the other main takeaways is that often your path is meandering, and that is okay. It seems to be often how God works, to a meandering paths. And so in our case, Tom looked at the situation of artisan cooperatives and said, okay, I'm going to make a business plan, we're going to sell in tourist locations, package products together, add value, and that's what we're going to do. And so he got some seed money from Food for the Hungry UK, and started buying samples here and there, and we were kind of excited about that. And then a couple of things happened. One of the things had to do with a person that God sent us. And we have seen that one of the major ways that God has blessed and directed us is the people who He's placed on our path. And so what happened was there came a woman named Katrina, who was interning for a U.S. company that bought and sold crafts. And they had some specific products like this grass basket that they had been buying from some other suppliers in Rwanda. And so Katrina was coming to connect with those suppliers and to meet the artisans and to talk about things. And as she discovered that the other suppliers either were totally unresponsive or were not interested in giving her access to the artisans, and just kind of were giving her other concerning responses, that led her to be seeking new sources of people making crafts. So she was connected with Tom, who was at the very beginning of the process. I had just come on board, a few weeks after Azizi Life was begun. And she said, well, I need people who make these and who make these and a couple of other things. Do you know of any artisans? And Tom is a can-do kind of guy, and so he was like, sure, I'm sure we can, we can make that happen. And so he started connecting Katrina with specific artisan groups. And up to that time, like I said, we had just kind of been buying some samples here and there and, kind of saying, oh, well, that looks great. We'll try to find a buyer. And Katrina came in, and some of our initial and most important lessons came from her, because she came in and she loved those artisans. She knew them, everyone by name. She loved them so sincerely and connected with them so genuinely. And if their product was not up to standard, she did not buy it. They will have, the artisan that made this, and by the way, this is not up to Katrina standards and not up to Azizi Life standards, but this artisan spent a week making this basket. But if it was not up to standard, she didn't buy it. But she took the time to coach them, to encourage them, to make sure that they understood the quality standards. And so it was from her and her example that I learned how to coach, and that I learned that love does not always mean like, oh, it's okay, I'm sure somebody will buy it, it's fine, I like it, I love it. But to say, no, here's the standard. You have the capacity to achieve it. I will help you in any way I can to achieve it. And I won't accept anything that is under what I know you're capable of achieving, and what the market wants, what I know will help you to be a successful businesswoman in the future. When we started talking to the group, for example, this group, the group that makes these baskets is called Agaseche Kamahoro, which means peace baskets. And they have a wonderful story. They were started by a woman named Paskasi, who lost almost her whole family in the genocide and decided to use her skills in basket weaving to bring people together for reconciliation, for working together. She even trained prisoners to weave so that they would have income when they were released to be home with their families. But Paskasi had also been burned by previous people who had come in, Westerners, a Westerner who had come in and said, okay, we want to buy, 400 baskets, and so ready, set, go, you make them, I'll be back. And he didn't come back. And so her weavers had invested hours and days and weeks in crafting these baskets that then they had no market for. And they were really hurt by that. Hi, welcome. No problem. And so we then had to navigate those waters. But having seen the artisan's previous experience really helped to form who we were. It helped us to see how important transparency is, how important communications is, how everything needs to be written down. And so we began to be shaped even by responding to artisans who had been in that kind of situation. But there were many more lessons to be had, even in the simple order and the simple partnership with Katrina, because our original idea, we had a very exciting and virtuous original idea, and that is that, like, middleman, cut out the middleman, you connect the artisans directly with the customers, and then they get more money, and so yeah, and so that's a great idea. We can just make the connection, and then we'll step away, and they can, make that happen between them. Well, then we tried it ourselves, and we said, oh, Right, okay, so you need to have these high quality standards. Oh, you need to communicate with the customer in English by email. Oh, you need to have a bank account in Rwanda, and oh, maybe one in maybe one in the States. And oh, you need to comply with Rwandan export standards and American import standards. Oh, and you need to tag the products and you need to fumigate them and all this stuff. And we realized that A, helping people is more complicated than it feels. And that is one of the takeaway lessons of what I want to share with you. Whatever you want to do, it's probably going to be harder and more complicated than you thought at the beginning. But probably also, but you can do it. So that's not to discourage you, but just like, that is the reality that we encountered. And I can just share a quote for you that I heard at an IJM gathering just last weekend. One of the field officers said that she works, I think, in Guatemala, and she said, this year we realized that what God was asking us to do was impossible. And I think that often that's the place that we come to. We come to the place where we're like, oh my gosh, this is so much harder than what we thought, either on a business level or on a personal level, but that's okay because God can do the impossible. And but I will use that to make a side point, and that is about the value of having people who are praying for you, and of being people and an organization of prayer and of seeking God. One thing that I haven't told you yet is that our #1 goal in our paper that we write up every year of our 3-year objectives, our #1 goal is to be Christ-centered. And we're still figuring out, what does that mean to be a business that's Christ-centered? What does that look like in a practical day-to-day? But one thing that we're convinced of, it's so good to see you,
it's
by
so
the way,
to see you
is that it's prayerfulness is a big piece of that. And so as you think about, whatever lies ahead, I encourage you to kind of invite people in to pray for you personally, to pray for your endeavors, and to make prayer a priority in the work that you're doing. So that's a bonus. A bonus point. So we learned lots of lessons. We encountered lots of kind of complications, but we also figured out how to do it. And we started in the export market, not something that we had originally planned on, but we saw that, oh, here's the potential. We have the capacity to do this. We can, open up the world to the artisans, and so we started to pursue that. So another big stage of lessons came a 1.5 years into my time, so maybe about 7 months or 6 months into my time with Azizi Life, when I went home for the first time. I came home for the first time to Pennsylvania, and I had some samples in my suitcase. We had bought this and that from the artisans, and at King of Prussia Mall, there's a store with African products, and so I was like, this is great. I'm going to go in there with my samples, and they're going to want to buy things, and it'll be perfect. So I went in, and I was like, I had my bag of samples, and I was like, I introduced myself, and then they were like, well, these look great, but what is your standard product line? What is your pricing for retail and wholesale? What is your terms of delivery? And they asked me all these, they used vocabulary that I had never even heard of. And I was kind of like, oh, right, yes, of course, let me get back to you, thank you very much, you know? And, but it was through that I realized, like, oh, we need a whole lot of structure to make that happen. And so I went back to Rwanda, and we started to be more systematic in what we were doing. And that is another lesson that I just want to share with you. I like to think of myself as like flexible, go with the flow, kind of, and like we're a developing social enterprise, so we're like, you know, exploring new grounds, and we don't want to be confined by organizational boundaries. Okay, that's great, but you need structure. Like, structure is your friend. And so we have grown in our success as we have been able to develop successful structures and even policies, and to really be able to define what we're doing and to refine so that we do it well. So we went back and we started going again and visiting the artisans and saying, okay, here's your range of products. I think that maybe this one would be marketable in a Western market, and that one, maybe if we change the colors, would be great. And how about for yours? Okay, this one and this one, and we began to select which products we thought truly would be marketable, and began to work with the artisans to refine what they were doing so that their quality increased, and they were ready for the time when they got more market connections. And so the products that you see in the catalog are the result of that. A lot of our products are pretty simple because they come from the original designs, the original things that the artisans were already making. It's really important for us that the artisan cooperatives remain independent. So let me just step back and tell you a little bit more about the cooperatives. Each cooperative is independently formed. They vary from about 8 to 20 members on average. Each cooperative has a leadership board, and they have skills and things that they're able to do, and they have a vision for their future and for the futures of their family. And so I always envision it as, you know, they are like poised to make a difference in their own lives, in their families, in their communities, but they lack those connections. And so it's such a privilege for us to serve as a bridge to connect the artisans with the market so that they can walk forward in the vision that they have for their lives and for their families. And we have seen that the artisans' involvement in their cooperatives, even outside of Azizi Life, but particularly now that they're earning income, is so valuable. Artisans, poverty is isolating. Poverty is isolating, and so before, you know, a lot of these ladies joined their groups, they felt very alone in their struggles. A lot of them shared with us that they were people within their communities who were always having to go to their neighbors and ask for a little something here and a little something there, just to pull, you know, just to meet their most basic needs. And they, some of them had marriages where their husbands were either they were widowed or their husbands weren't in the picture, or their husbands were not contributors to the family. Some of the, a few of the ladies shared about, my husband is an alcoholic, and so any money that came into the family, he just spent, and I still had nothing for the kids, for their education and for their food. And so just simply being a part of a weaving cooperative helps the women to feel a sense of togetherness while they weave. They talk about important topics, about child rearing and about HIV/AIDS prevention, and it's a means of reconciliation and mutual support. They help one another, they visit one another. So that in itself is so valuable. But of course, if you add on top of that income, and particularly if it's regular income, which we're aiming towards, then the women, it's life-changing, of course. And it's really touching, especially in those first days, to have spoken to the artisans and for them to say, oh, now with my weaving income, I can buy food, I can buy soap, I can buy moisturizer is always up there in their list of things that they're excited to be able to buy. Just the basic necessities to supplement their subsistence farming, which really did not meet all of the nutritional and financial needs of their families. And now, 5 years into the business, we, the artisans are beyond that. The ladies have moved, a lot of them, from being receivers in their community to being contributors in their community. They're able to give at church. They're able to show kindness and charity to their neighbors. So that is so gratifying to see. They're able to pay for the national health insurance and schooling, and some of them have even bought cell phones, and it's really beautiful and gratifying to see. That's a little bit more of a glimpse of what is in the heart of what we do. So we learned a lot along the way and developed systems that would enable us to better and better serve the artisans. But there were still hard lessons. Like, for example, there were a pair of sisters who came, and one of the sisters, they communicated with us on email. And one of the sisters had been to Rwanda on a missions trip, and she had bought a bag much like this. She had bought this bag from somewhere in a rural community. She loved this bag. She and her sister wanted to build a business around these handbags. And so we were like, yes, this is great. Of course we can help you. This should be easy. You bought it in Rwanda. And so we kind of jumped into this project with them. It was not easy. It was like they had a very specific vision, which was great. They were like, all we want is this same lining that I got in my bag, and then, we just want to change this a little bit. And turns out that the lining was like an old shirt in a fabric that was like impossible to find in Rwanda. And we looked. I spent like days looking for fabric, and then we spent hours and days working with the artisans to refine the design, which we were really excited about, until we found that the design was almost impossible for the great majority of the artisans. And so now, we are like way down in the South. We've put ourselves at significant expense to go visit this group. We're excited, and we have to reject like 60% of the bags that they've made. And they're discouraged, and we're discouraged, and ladies are dropping out of the weaving cooperative because, like, we're like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And that is, I share that to say that, like, even when you feel like, you know, this is a great opportunity, now we have a feel for what we're doing, still there's major challenges that come up along the way. But from each of those we learn, right? And so we learned and grew through that experience as well. Another experience we grew through is that these ladies connected us with another organization in Rwanda who work with baskets, and we were like, this is great. You know, we have these values of collaboration and transparency, and so we're excited to collaborate, and we went and visited a representative of their company, and we were asking all these questions, and he was sharing about details about shipping and fumigation and all these things that had like confounded us. We were so excited. And then we went, like a few days later, we got an email from these partners, and they were like, I don't know what you did, but whatever it was very offensive to the person you met with, and like you didn't totally disclose that you were doing the same thing, and we were like, what did we say and what did we not say? We're not sure. And yeah, and that was a challenge, that actually that misunderstanding, despite our best effort, continued for like several years. And so that was a lesson in like, okay, we need to communicate more clearly. We need to realize that, you know, even though we're working for the same goal, you know, if you're in a business, other businesses might not see you as like someone they want to pal with. We've learned about, yeah, just being open and prayerful and kind of navigating some of those challenging waters. So those have been, in the end, good experiences for us. Let's see. I can close by, or just talk about, before I close, about some more businessy kinds of things. I want to talk about fair wage, and if you're interested, maybe at the end you can ask about company structure, but what I'll say is that Azizi Life, I don't think I mentioned this, was founded as a business in Rwanda, a limited company, because we were told at that time of starting that NGOs, which we were under Food for the Hungry, were not permitted to engage in trade. And so we registered as a company. That affected some of our NGO relationships, but it also meant that one of the goals that we had would be more possible, and that goal is local ownership. Since the very beginning, we had the goal to be locally owned and operated within 10 years. And because of that, you know, very initial advice, and that led us to set up independently, that goal will be possible. And so maybe a side lesson is that, you know, sometimes even in our ignorance and, you know, God directs our path through those choices when we don't even know exactly what we're doing. We're kind of feeling our way like this, but God is directing our paths. Fair wage is hard. Like, fair trade, we are committed to fair trade and to the principles of fair trade, which honors the workers as well as the environment, and, you know, traditional artisan techniques and that kind of thing. And we are really excited about the artisans getting a fair wage, you know, and so we do the work of figuring out, okay, how long does each thing take, and what are the material costs, but then you have to weigh that with, like, what are things being paid for on the local market, and what will the Western market bear? And so weighing all of those things has been one of our greatest challenges. It is not, it's not like cut and dry at all, at all. And but I mean, one of the approaches that we have taken is to, like I said, just try to be transparent with the artisans, try to be clear about what our intentions are, engage in conversation with them about what they feel like is a fair wage, explain our rationale for the payment that we set for the products. And I'll note that the way that we work is that we're basically customers for the artisans. So we place an order, we make the quality standards clear, and then everything that they bring that meets those quality standards, we purchase for the agreed upon wage, and then we do all the work to get those products to market and to promote the artisans and their work around the world. Which is really great, because otherwise the artisans would have to wait like 3, 6, 9 months, a year before they get their wage. So in terms of pricing, we knew from the beginning that we wanted to start with the fair wage to the artisan and then do our pricing from there. So that's what we do, but we're still working on that. We're still navigating it. So that's a little bit about fair wage. I'm trying to think if I've covered all the things that I want to share with you, just the lessons that we've learned. I think another thing that we've learned is that it takes all kinds of people to make this kind of work work. Yes, it takes the business-minded people, the people that I turned my nose up at when I was in school, and now I wish that I magically had their knowledge. But it takes the people who are like awesome at spreadsheets and can do business plans and have a vision for, can do a 10-year strategy. And it also takes people who are patient enough to do the day-to-day data input. And you need artists and graphic designers and people who are great at connecting with other people, and just techie people, and all kinds of gifts and skills are necessary in order to make this kind of thing work. And so I wanted to share that just to encourage you that, whatever your interests and your gifts and your skills are, there is a place where someone is going, oh my gosh, if only I had someone, with that skill set. And so, but also to just encourage you to be, to realize that when you're in the thick of it, you're going to need all kinds of people to be involved. And that's a really beautiful thing. I really like that about the work. So those were some of the lessons that we had, and some of the things that I wanted to share with you from our story. And so I want to open it up to you to ask whatever questions you have about Azizi Life, about social enterprise, about my own journey, whatever you want to ask. The floor is open.
I'd like to hear the rest of the story, like some of the stories that you've shared, like when you went to the King of Prussia Mall, and let me get back to you, did you ever do that, or was that the end? Do they now buy from you?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
And then like some of the others too, like the women that were so discouraged and dropped out, was that just water under the bridge, you moved on, or did you maintain those relationships, or maybe a couple of those stories?
Okay, the second part of the story. Well, with the King of Prussia Mall relationship, we came back to them and we said, okay, here's our standard line of products, and here are our pricing. And so they selected a couple of products which they tried out in their store with, I don't know, kind of moderate success. So that hasn't been like a booming, like, yes, they're going to sell all of our stuff. But we did follow up with them, and we learned from them also about the way that they engage in trade and the kind of products that they're finding are selling in this area and that kind of thing. The ladies of that weaving cooperative, they did not thrive. We kind of said to them, you know, we made suggestions. We were like, well, okay, if not everybody can do this part perfectly, but they can do the first, you know, if they can do out of 7 parts, they can do the first 6 perfectly, but then their bag gets messed up on part 7, you know, then why don't you have a part 1 specialist, a part 2 specialist, a part 3 specialist? We were like, yes, this is a great idea. And they kind of were like, no, I don't think that will work. And so we were like, well, you can work on it and let us know. You know, if you feel like you're up to giving it another try. And they were kind of like, oh. Yeah, so they kind of petered out, which was hard for us, you know, because our relationships with the artisans are really at the top of our priorities and, you know, wanting to see their well-being. But I think it was in part a business decision that we had to make, like, okay, you know, we are spending X amount of money to drive down into this rural area, and if we only buy 2 handbags from that trip, like, it is not a financially viable thing for us. So yeah. So some of the stories end in like, oh.
So you're a for-profit business.
In Rwanda, we are a for-profit business, but as a social enterprise, our focus is on the benefit of the artisans. And we offer in that some other trainings, in addition to our coaching, some other kind of life benefit trainings, like first aid, for example. And we did a Sunday school leaders training, as well as some weekly offerings, like we do a Bible study on Wednesdays, which is the day when artisan representatives come and they bring the products that we've ordered. So we offer a Bible study and a little English lesson and that kind of thing. So that's part of the social of our social enterprise. And then our idea is that, well, we want to be a self-sustaining business. So as I mentioned, we had some seed money come into the business at the beginning, but really our goal is to be excellent at business, and that's what keeps us going. You know, we've observed within the NGO world that there are times when, you know, you're doing a great program and then the funding ends and you're like, oh, sorry, child-headed households, but we can't support you anymore. You know, like, wah, wah, no funding. So we did not want to be subject to that. And so, so part of the objective is that self-sustainability. But we also, it's part of the vision that with some of the profit from the businesses in Rwanda and also from the stateside sales, part of the profit goes back into community development work. And our intent is that that will be work that is done by the artisans within their own communities. So to that end, we're pursuing training with CHE. I don't know if you guys know CHE, Community Health Evangelism, but they have lots of lessons for development that are shared with neighbors, by neighbors. Yeah, so that is part of our vision. In the States, Azizi Life is a registered 501c3 organization. And so the idea is that Azizi Life US serves Azizi Life Rwanda both in the business connections as well as in the community development efforts, and to kind of serve as a compass holder to help Azizi Life Rwanda make sure that they're continuing to walk forward both in excellence in business and in the social part of the social enterprise. So I normally live in Rwanda. This year I'm on family leave, and so I'm working part-time with Azizi Life to build up the structure here. So we're building up our board of directors and our volunteers and our sales connections. And actually, to be honest, sales have been a challenge for us. Somebody told me a couple of years ago, she said, Christi, I see that, if we picture business as a three-legged stool, I can see that, you guys are really strong on the artisan relationships and on the, quality products, but there's another sales leg to that stool. And I really had to come to grips as a reluctant salesperson with the fact that I could love the artisans all I want, and I could be as excited as I wanted to about how tightly this basket is woven, but if I don't find people to buy this basket, the artisans are not feeding their kids. And so so we are excited to serve the artisans in that way, and that's one of the areas that we expect to really grow in this year. Yeah.
Do you do a lot of your sales online, or is your product in a lot of stores?
We do have a website, azizilife.com, which serves both for sales and also for our vision that there's some kind of meaningful connection between the customer and the artisans. And so I'll take the opportunity to say that on the website there is a whole section about the artisans, and each product is tagged with the name of the artisan and their group, so that customers can go online, look them up, see their picture, read their story, because as we tell the artisans, our goal is not only for the benefit of the artisans, but we really want to be making an impact internationally. Small impacts in the lives of our customers, if they can kind of just open their minds and their hearts a little bit and to get a glimpse into someone else's life, consider someone else's livelihood, then that's part of our vision as well. So so we have online. We get a few sales through that. Then we have some customers who purchase and sell the products on their own websites, at fair trade shows or craft shows. A couple, let's see, do we have brick and mortar customers? A couple of brick and mortar customers who have their own physical shops. We have a couple of customers who have bought products in order to give to their own donors, for example. We're able to do some custom products, so we've had a few people who have, for example, bought baskets like these for wedding favors. And so one customer just wanted them like this, one customer wanted the initials of the bride and groom on them, so we did that. So those are some of our venues for sales. Yeah. Any other questions I can answer for you? Well, thank you so much for coming. It's really been a pleasure to share with you, from our journey. I hope that my disclosure that everything, it's not always easy, is not a discouragement, but rather an encouragement to you, so that when you encounter those hard things, it's not a surprise, but you're able to kind of just continue to seek God and take it in stride and work through those things. Yeah, so don't forget to pull together a group of people who are praying for you and cheering you on, to look for who God is sending along your way to be a resource, and to really glean as much as you can, not only from those people who come along your way, but from all the experiences that you have, whether it feels like a success or whether it feels like a delay. To glean all you can from this time of preparation, because, yeah, the time is not wasted. And really, I mean, our calling is to serve God and to love Him and the people around us, no matter what we're doing. And so, you know, whether that's getting to do your dream job in in Rwanda, or whether it's, you know, being a student or waiting tables, like, that's our calling, and that is what, yeah. And so we can serve with value, no matter what our path is looking like at this time. So, yeah. So thank you very much.